The thing that I guess that's weird about it, for me at least, is I understand all that. You obviously will know better than I will just by years alone. How common is it ever for a manager to wind up making a mid-battle call, though?
Usually, not often. Not often.
So therefore, that's part of the concern. Unfortunately, the tenor for a lot of the criticism that has gone his way has been not dissimilar to the sitting president, in the sense that there are questions regarding if age is a factor in whether they can hold a high position. And you don't want to be mean-spirited about it, but at the same time, you do have to be realistic about this sort of concern. And this is just one in many chains of it. I guess that's more of it, because if this were it in and of itself and that's all, then obviously we wouldn't be having a problem. But not only is it that the White Sox have been severely underachieving, they are injury-riddled to high hell. Pretty certain.
Doesn't one hand wash the other? Doesn't one hand wash the other? Yes, you're underachieving. Why? Some of it's your play. Some of it is your players.
And so, therefore, the concerns regarding him, I'll be honest, there is a bit of being opportunistic in this, in that I am using, and nobody really cares at the end of the year if you're hurt or not, use the record as a means to get a guy out that we never wanted here in the first place. So there is that aspect of it. The concern I have more is that with these types of rash-based decisions, especially with a roster that is definitely not as good as the Yankees, and this weekend series coming up against the Astros, I fully expect the White Sox to lose and maybe drop all three. I am deeply concerned about those marginal choices, losing a division championship or a playoff series, and that's more of the reason for all of this concern in the first place. Is I didn't want this old dude in the first place for these exact reasons. It wasn't like I doubted he could get us to 90 wins. It's that I doubted he could get us to a title. And as of right now, there's no question he will not be the guy to do that.
No, and quite the opposite. In fact, when it happened, you flat out said that, and I'll give you that credit, absolutely. You flat out said, our talent alone is going to get us to 90 wins. And you were right. They did last year. You got, 93, I think? And then you ran into an Astros team that,
and they floored us.
You can argue which team is actually better, but they outplayed you in that series, obviously. They outpitched you in that series. It is what it is. And I understand your frustration. And I understand you being opportunistic with using this as one of the multitude of examples. Last year, we saw it plenty of times. He had a hard time connecting with the new way of baseball, the younger players. He's a stickler for the unwritten rules that have been in the game for 60, 70, 80 years. Have we heard as much about that this year? They've already been griping about him in general, but I haven't heard too much about him in that same, exactly the example you gave us for last year with Yerman. So you are closer to this than I am. I hear the national news on this. You have insides with the Chicago side. You can actually hear and find out. Is there anything going on where the players are issuing problems with him?
The problem with whether the players are having issues or not is that half the roster is performing so beyond low. Specifically, guys like Yasmani Grandal and Yohan Moncada, which in the show I did with AJ before the season, I warned that Moncada was our weak link, and he has been beyond putrid. He looks like he couldn't even belong on the Tigers lineup. That's how bad he's been.
That's bad.
Yeah. So the problem is that not only is it that most of the guys are hurt who would be saying these sorts of things, like Tim Anderson's been out for the last at least 3 weeks, maybe longer. But then Lance Lynn's been injured. Liam Hendricks is now on the IL. You had Dylan Cease hasn't been hurt, thank God. But Eloy Jimenez has been out. Robert's been out. All these guys. And then everybody else who's remained has played so poorly that any chatter from them is immediately going to be twisted back to, you're not playing well enough in order to have these concerns. And to be honest, we would hear it mostly from Anderson. To be fair, he hasn't had nearly as good a season as he had last year. His error count's his fielding's been really bad, and he's been hurt. Yeah, most of the concerns for this season are not La Russa related as much as it was last year, but the problem is that this roster that only has maybe a year, 2 years left before we start to run into a lot of problems, especially with an aging pitching staff like Lance Lynn's not going to be as good as he was last year.
I'ma get it. You know I be on the way.